You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside and outside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to another Colts Blue Zone podcast. Here in the studio with Joe Hopkins, Mike Chappell joins us as well. Joe, 31 days until the Colts season opener, but hey, it's only 2 days until the preseason opener. We're going to be talking a little bit of getting ready for the Buffalo Bills today.
Yeah, obviously the regular season is the main course, but I'm an appetizer man myself. I'm ready to get some, it's like the little preseasons, the finger foods of the NFL dining experience. So I'm ready to taste whatever I can get.
Joe, in the top 1% of fans excited for the preseason here in the NFL, there aren't that many, but we do encourage you to watch them on Fox 59 if you're located in the central Indiana area when the team kicks off. I believe it's a 4 o'clock kickoff. On Saturday, yeah. Colts in Buffalo. Great show on tap. We'll preview that opener, discuss the buzz around training camp, players starting or not playing, rather, in that opener, and plenty of other things. We begin with the news of the week, and really, to me, that's what Frank Reich had to say about Shaq Leonard's status as they move forward, getting ready for the year. We have seen Leonard, Mike, on the practice fields, but not suited up. He's just in his regular clothes. He's I wouldn't say running around, but he's bouncing around very much in maniac fashion. What Frank Reich said on Wednesday is the team is hopeful that Leonard's going to be ready for week 1, but it's no guarantee. So you look at just the language that's used, and I understand Colts fans being pessimistic here because you see some of the same language that was used with Andrew Luck, although there are certainly differences there. But being burned in the past, you just fear being burned in the present. And that's what this Leonard situation could shape up to be. I wouldn't be surprised if this bleeds into the regular season because Frank Reich is doing nothing to say that it won't at this point of training camp.
Well, yeah, and everybody wants timelines. And even Leonard didn't give us a timeline when we talked to him when camp opened. He said, when I'm ready, I'll be out there. And I'm concerned until he practices. I mean, how are you not? This was not a back procedure. This was back surgery on 2 discs. And this is a guy who lives and dies with athleticism. He's on PUP. And again, until he's out there, he's not out there. And to watch him just sort of be the cheerleader for the defense and all that is one thing, but to play at a high level is totally different. We have time. He has time. I'm with you. I think this bleeds into the regular season. I just do. And I think what's going to be the case is for roster purposes, he'll somehow pass a physical on the cut to 53, and he'll be on a 53, and then he'll be week to week. If he stays on PUP from camp to the regular season, he's going to miss at least 4 games. So we'll have a much better indication when they start making the roster cut to 53. But until he's out there, if you're not concerned, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, Joe, from the offseason when Leonard spoke to us at OTAs, and he was just describing last season, at that point, I think he raised some eyebrows just because of some of the words that he used there, saying that last year he kind of fell out of love with the game, that it was a serious, that it was a real mental struggle for him to get through last year, whether it was personal issues, his injury issues, what have you. It didn't sound like, it didn't sound as much like the Leonard that we've seen in the past, who's, and we see a little bit of it, in training camp where he is bouncing up and down the sidelines. As Mike said, he is the cheerleader for the defense. But I think at that point for me is when maybe some small red flags started to go up. Nothing that you would really freak out about at that time. But again, kind of to my point about Colts fans that have experienced this before, so maybe they're more ready, or we are even in the media more ready to jump to the conclusion that this could be a lot more serious than anybody is trying to let on.
Yeah, and the NFL is such a mental grind already that to have to deal with stuff off the field, to have to deal with an injury that really it lasted the entire year for him last year. I can totally see how he feels that way. And Darius Leonard is also someone who, he doesn't hide what he's feeling. He kind of wears his personality on his sleeve there and opens up about these things. And so I can kind of understand that. I wouldn't be as worried about him like a surprise retirement or something like that, because he's also so passionate about the game. I think afterwards, a few articles came out about that, and he kind of put to rest, at least in my mind, any concerns that he might not want to play football anymore. But in terms of him being ready for the season, it sounds like it's pretty 50-50 up in the air right now if he's ready for week 1. Hopefully it's not a situation where he gets placed on PUP and misses like 4 games. Hopefully it's more of a 1 or 2 game type situation. But even if that's the case, the Colts, we've talked about it, are very deep at linebacker. And hopefully, obviously there's no replacing Darius Leonard, but I don't think all of a sudden the linebacker core is going to turn into this huge liability.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's one of the best things the Colts have going for them, in the fact that you play 2 linebackers for 70 or 80% of your defensive snaps, and you have, whether it's Leonard and Okereke, the 2 starters, but you also have guys behind them. E.J. Speed has come on in the past, Joe's guy, and really racked up some tackles in the games that he's been a full-time starter. And then, of course, you have my guy, Zaire Franklin, as well, who's played and just got a new contract this last offseason and has played well in his duty as well. So linebacker really could be one of the deeper spots on the Colts roster right now, but there's no fully replacing what the Maniac can do, obviously, if he is out there or not.
Yeah, we were talking today just because that's what we do during camp when there's not a lot going on. And the way that this defense looks right now, and let's give Darius some motivation. I would list him about 4th on players I don't want to lose on defense. I mean, I'm putting in Ngakoue first, and maybe Gilmore, and then Buck in the middle, and then Leonard. And that's not to diminish Leonard at all. It's just to say the other guys are at such playmaking positions. So, what's good is they've got 4 or 5 playmakers on defense. But as you mentioned, the way they play, and Okereke's playing well, and your guys playing well, we'll see about E.J. Speed. I think he's shown a lot. He's really stood out in camp. But if you give me the choice of losing Shaq or Ngakoue or Stephen Gilmore, I'm taking Shaq.
Gilmore has been spectacular in camp. He really has. He's been one of the best performers. Has really, for all intents and purposes so far, put to bed any concerns about his age or his injury status, for sure. So I'm on there with you, Mike. I think that was a very reasonable list of guys to say are more important to this Colts defense than Leonard might be. But that's obviously something we'll continue to monitor over the coming weeks. 2 more weeks in Westfield at Grant Park, and then there's a couple weeks after that until the actual season begins, when they wrap up official quote-unquote training camp, sort of, or the public portion of training camp, and head back to the facility for a week or 2 before the regular season kicks off there in early September. The Colts dropped their first official depth chart on Tuesday. A couple takeaways from that list as we peruse it up and down. Rookie Alec Pierce is a starting wide receiver alongside Michael Pittman Jr. and Paris Campbell. So those are your top 3. On defense, rookie Nick Cross is listed as the starting safety over Rodney McLeod. And Cross and McLeod did, at least early in the camp, do a little bit more back and forth as to who was there with the first team. I think Cross has been there this week for both the days that I've seen. On Wednesday and Thursday, he's been with the starting unit. Brandon Faison is listed as the starting cornerback over Isaiah Rodgers, and we've seen that consistently since the beginning of camp. It has been Faison running with that first team, and Rodgers running with the second team. At kicker, Rodrigo Blankenship is listed as the starter over Jake Verity. Tight end, Mo Alley Cox and Kylan Granson are your starting tight ends. Notable in terms of backups on this list, rookie offensive tackle Bernard Ryman is right behind Matt Pryor, backing up him at left tackle. Ben Banigou is listed as the second string Leo behind Yannick Ngakoue, and he's listed ahead there of Dio Odangbo, which is, I think, significant. And linebackers Jojo Doman and Forrest Ryan are listed ahead of my other guy, Sterling Weatherford, there at the linebacker position. So those are just a couple takeaways there from the depth chart. Joe, from all those things right there, what kind of stood out to you as something that was noteworthy from this first all-important depth chart that was released on Tuesday of this first preseason game week?
To me, the thing that stands out the most is their confidence in Alec Pierce to go ahead and list him as a starting wide receiver. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised at all if they listed Doolin and was kind of took a rookie has to earn it approach. The reports I've seen about Pierce is that he's been very good and is actually getting better, kind of coming along as camp goes along. So that's great to see out of your top draft pick from this April. The other guys, Cross, I was very confident that he'd win the starting role as kind of that box safety over the smaller McLeod. Faison, we kind of talked about, more familiar with the scheme, bigger cornerback who kind of fits that press that Gus Bradley wants to run. So it's not surprising to see him over Rodgers. But I kind of expect even if he is a starter, they would kind of rotate a little bit and maybe just matchup dependent. If they're playing man and they're facing someone with blazing speed, maybe Rodgers tries to tie him up. But I guess the only other thing is Ben Banigou. It would be very, very encouraging to see him actually earn some kind of role with this team and do something. It would be encouraging to see him do something, literally anything, is more than what we've gotten out of him. So that'd be great.
Chap, I'm obviously very sarcastic when I say all-important depth chart before the first preseason game. But anything in that list kind of stand out to you as noteworthy before we're about to kick off here?
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I don't put much stock in these. I just don't think you have to do it. The one thing that we were talking about today, and it doesn't really show up on the depth chart, is the third and fourth tight end between the rookies, Ogletree and Jelani Woods. It's Ogletree and then Jelani Woods. The sixth round pick has jumped Woods. He looks good. And I want to see how this Ben Banigou thing plays out. I'm not on board. I think the top four ends are Quiddy Lewis, Taquan Lewis, who's really looked good coming back from that awful injury, and then Ngakoue, and then I think Dio is your fourth guy. I just do. But we'll see. I was watching the backup offensive line today, which it's one of those you hope we never have to use them, but you will. I'm concerned that Dennis Kelly's not practiced for probably a week. I mean, he was the guy you were hoping was your swing tackle. You really were, and you can't be a swing tackle if you don't. If you're hurt. So I don't put a lot of stock in these. We'll see if they change after a preseason. This is one where I think they throw this in front of a coach, and for the most part, a lot of these are already listed, and he just sort of jots down names. But like you mentioned, Brandon Faison ahead of Isaiah Rodgers. That's a little bit of a surprise, I guess. But they're all going to play a lot. And Rodgers is a playmaker. He's just a playmaker. When you watch he and the Julian Blackmans, they just – and again, I'll bring it up again. Watching Julian Blackmon, it's unbelievable. The way he's playing, the range, the way he covers territory. And, oh, by the way, he blew out his Achilles last October. It's incredible. But if you want to make a big deal of the depth chart, knock yourself out. I just kind of watch practice and go that way. But these serve a purpose, so enjoy it or criticize it, however you feel.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the third tight end, and it's something that we could have talked about a little bit later when we're into training camp buzz. But now that it's here, kind of in front of us, I think it's noteworthy to mention that Joe, there's no doubt about it that Alec Ogletree has taken over the lion's share of reps from Jelani Woods with the first team unit. He's the first one there. If they're doing if it's either one or two of them, one of the two of them rather with the first team. Like we see him out there with the ones frequently, just with different formations that they're using. Whether it's Woods, it's usually Mo and Ogletree or Mo and Granson, of course, who are out there, but. A sixth-round pick who went to Findlay and then Youngstown State. I think that he's come along so much faster than you could have dreamed for when he was drafted at the time, knowing that I think the Colts liked him a lot. If you found more than maybe the person who scouted him and said that he could have had an impact like he has had in training camp, or could have wowed as much in training camp. If you found someone in the building like that, I think that would have been surprising because what he has done has been pretty impressive, especially given the fact that he's had to supplant a third-round pick to do it himself.
Yeah, in which obviously you want to see Jelani step up as well. But I'm elated to hear that Ogletree is playing as well as he is, because it gives Jelani more time. If you get 2 good tight ends out of this draft, even better. But I've just seen, the one-handed catch that the Colts posted on Twitter was a thing of beauty. And so if this is a guy who I believe was a former wide receiver and has kind of put on weight over his college career. So if they're basically getting someone with wide receiver skills in a tight end's body, that's exactly what they hope for when they spent a kind of a 6th-round flyer on him.
Really eager to see his role. To me, very much like how I have viewed this entire offseason Alec Pierce. Like, if you give him a specific role, let him thrive in it. And I think Ogletree can do exactly that. You don't want him to be your number 1 tight end right now, but if he can come in and, like I said, play a specific role in specific packages with a specific route tree, that is not an entire grasp of the entire offense, but it's a limited grasp of the offense. I think he can really succeed because of his athletic ability and those things that he has flashed so far. So very eager to see what he is able to do this weekend in Buffalo and even beyond that. What does Hancock Health's membership in the Mayo Clinic Care Network mean for you? It means our independent health network now has access to the knowledge and resources of the world leader in medicine. It means your Hancock Health doctor can now consult with Mayo Clinic specialists to confirm a diagnosis or treatment plan, and it means that together we're making health possible for you. Learn more about our new clinical collaboration at hancockregional.org/Mayo Clinic. So the Colts have finished their practice before taking off for Buffalo. The hay is in the barn, as they speak. So tomorrow you'll load up on a plane, get ready for that first road trip of the year, take a flight to central New York, right across the river from Canada, and you enjoy yourself some time away from it all, and then go ahead and kick off Saturday afternoon. Chap, I think from what we have seen of the training camp so far, the defense has gotten the better of the offense for the most part. Now, I don't want to say it's a completely one-sided show, because obviously the offense makes its plays here and there, and as Joe mentioned, you see those posted on Twitter frequently from what happens well out there for the offense. But like you and me, who've been out there at a good portion of these practices, you at all of them, I believe, me at almost all of them, then you can tell that the defense has gotten the better of the offense more often than not. And that could be something that's just an early camp thing, but I think that you and me are on the same page, I would think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, saying that this Colts defense has been pretty darn impressive, and we think that it's probably going to be, based on the quality of the players that are there, one of the better ones in the league this season, if they can take that step forward from what they were last year. And everything in training camp so far has indicated that they have the playmakers and they have the ability to do so.
There's probably more optimistic expectations about this defense than I can remember in several years, for a lot of reasons we've talked about. They've got a proven pass rusher, they've got a proven corner, they got another Pro Bowl nickel corner in Buck and Leonard. So yeah, and the defense has gotten the better of it since pads went on. Maybe that's to be expected. I don't know, but the offense still has had their moments, and maybe that's the way. That's sort of the way games go, I think, where the offense has fits and starts and all this, and the defense maybe is more level. I don't know. But I like the offense. I really like the defense. I really like this defense. The DBs are getting their hands on a lot of balls. Again, we're seeing a lot from Blackman. Gilmore is making these receivers better by making it tough to play in drills. So in Ngakwe's making Pryor better, because Pryor's not seen a player at this level consistently. DeForest Buckner's blowing up the middle a lot. I'm sure Ryan Kelly and the guards are just flat tired of blocking Buck and Grover Stewart. I bet they are. So I like it. But again, I think the defense has its moments. And what's been so kind of fun to watch is they posted a couple things of Kylan Granson. He started off playing not very well in camp. Just had some uneven moments. In the last couple of days, they've sort of force-fed him more activity, and he's come up with some good catches. So I like it. And the one thing that we've talked about, and since we're talking maybe training camp buzz as well, I watch Paris Campbell, and I'm telling you, I just think about what he can be, what this offense can be with Paris Campbell playing 60% of the snaps in 15, 16 games. He just looks good. He and Ryan are hitting it off on these crossing routes, and I start thinking, boy, what if? And then I default to the fact he's played 15 games in 3 years. 15 games in 3 years. So so much depends on Paris Campbell, because without him, there's no, well, we can go to this. No, he's that unique player you've got on offense. So you kind of cross your fingers, and they've got talent just about everywhere. And then, if they have an injury here, an injury there, things change. But that's how it is just about everywhere. Every team has strengths. And boy, if you lose this guy, what are you going to do? I like the way this team's built, and I'm semi-optimistic, really, on the defense and pretty much on the offense.
About the offense, since Mike directed it there, Joe, with Paris Campbell in particular, we've talked this entire offseason about the quote-unquote need to bring in a veteran wide receiver, and Chris Ballard obviously did not think it was much of a need as the rest of us. And if Paris Campbell can be a contributor, then that certainly would diminish the need for anyone else, obviously, because as Mike said, he's the guy that's kind of an X factor, and really the two guys that Mike mentioned, Kylan Granson can be a matchup X factor at tight end too. So those two guys would probably, in my mind, be the 1 and 2 of the guys that can really take our off-season narrative of they need another pass catcher, they need another wide receiver, and shove it back in our face if they both take, in Granson's case, take a good step forward in his development, and in Campbell's case, just stay healthy and start from there. Yeah,
well, because Campbell's inability to stay on the field is the reason that need was there in the first place. I mean, second-round pick, all the talent in the world, and when he's on the field, he's shown it, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I really think if Campbell stays healthy, 1,000-yard season is coming for him. I think it's right there. I think his quick game works with what Matt Ryan wants to do. And there's not, other than Pittman, there's not a lot of other target competition on this team. I like Granson in the fact that, we kind of talked about specific role for Drew Ogletree. No one has a more specific role in the tight end group than Kylan Granson. I think they can really get him on some mismatches against some of the slower linebackers and get him open in run after catch situations. I think this offense can be good. I mean, it's a top 10 unit basically every year, top 10 or 11 towards the end of, 9, 10, 11 is where they're usually ranked. I think they can be there again this year, but I think we could have a top 5 defense if everyone stays healthy and it plays out the way that we're seeing in training camp. And, I mean, top 10 offense, top 5 defense sounds like a good formula to me.
Well, yeah. Chap.
Yeah, it's funny when I keep banging the drum, as several of us have, about the receivers and bring in a guy, and T.Y.'s still not here. And now I'm back on the idea that if T.Y. were going to be here, he would be here. I looked at some of the top free agent receivers, okay? And I'm not listing Odell Beckham because he'll be ready like in November, which helps him not a bit. So we're talking Will Fuller, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Alan Hearns, John Ross, Deshaun Jackson, Adam Humphries, D.D. Westbrook, Travis Benjamin. So when you wait this, and yes, they could trade for a guy. That could happen. But when you wait this long, and then you wake up next Tuesday and you say, boy, we need another receiver. Well, they're gone. The pool's really dried up. So it almost seems like barring a trade, that they're sort of all in with this group. And if T.Y. is still in the mix and you're waiting for somebody to get hurt, say Pittman, heaven forbid, or Parrish go down, all of a sudden T.Y.'s leverage goes up. So it makes me nervous. It's made me nervous all off season. The problem is I just default back to is when you wait this long and you decide you need something, that something might not be good enough to really to take care of what you need.
Yeah, and I think everything that has happened, that has transpired, has backed up what Chris Ballard has said, or even Frank Reich has said throughout the offseason, that we like these guys. We want to stick with these guys. And really, for something to change, then something has to change within the group. And that really hasn't happened in training camp. I don't think that any of the guys, Pittman, Campbell, Pierce, Doolin, none of them have taken a significant regression or step back. None of them have just not been able to catch the ball, especially Pittman at the top. I mean, he's looked fine. If there was any indication that he was struggling in camp, then maybe you really go out and take a swing at somebody. But that hasn't happened. They're right now backing up what Frank Reich and what Chris Ballard have said throughout the offseason. But of course, that's also going against your own guys. It's in very controlled environments. We'll see exactly how much Pittman plays here in the preseason, because
very little, I hope.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, he's maybe one of those that might not be considered to play all that much, I think.
And a name we haven't really mentioned yet here in this conversation is Nahim Hines. You know, I've heard he's been much more involved as a receiver this training camp than really what he showed last season during the 2021 season. Obviously, he showed it in the past, but what are you guys' thoughts? You've been out there. How have they really integrated Nahim Hines this training camp differently than what they've done in the past?
Yeah, there's a good difference, I think, between last year or the year before, even that, and this year. They've really tried to work him with the wide receivers more when he's out there in individual drills, first of all. And we see a lot more of both him and Taylor on the field at the same time.
Good.
You know, they've what the Colts do a lot in, like, just for an example, today. I want to do this without giving away too many specifics, obviously, because they would be upset with me, I'm sure. But like today, they worked a lot in their 11-on-11 session of stacks and bunches was kind of what they were specifically working on today. So they put these 11-on-11 sessions together where you're doing similar formations or at least similar personnel groups and working them a lot together. So I didn't see quite as much of it today specifically. But there have been others in the past where, like, we're working on short yardage today, or we're working on first down today, where we've seen more of Taylor and Hines together. And so when you have both of them on the field together, obviously, you're going to see them used in different ways. Like, Nahim's going to split out, and then if they want him to run, he'll go in motion, you know, and they'll either pitch to him or he'll join them in the backfield. Like, and I don't think that's giving away too much. People will realize that immediately when it's happening. So that's, I guess that's my convoluted way of answering your question, is that I think that you'll see them both on the field a little bit more. So that just gives Nahim a couple more snaps. I still think Taylor will get, obviously, the big share of the handoffs and the carries back there. But Chap, I think we'll see probably some more snaps for Nahim overall this year when we just look at his snap count at the end of the season.
Yeah, I did a story on him a couple of days ago, and we've talked about this. He's due for the big year because he's been every other year. You know, as a rookie, and again, it's as the quarterbacks have differed. Had his best season, I think it was, as a rookie with Andrew Luck, no surprise. Tailed off with Brissett. Comes back with another strong year with Phillip Rivers, who loves to throw to running backs, and then not so much with Wentz. And Hines has had 63 catches twice. That's his career high. And I talked to him. I said, there's been talk. You know, I had one person in the organization say, I think 70. And I had someone tell me 80. They thought he'd get 80 catches. Only two Colts running backs have had 80 catches, and it's Marshall Faulk and Joe Washington. So it's 86 is the team record for a running back. I don't think he goes there. I think that's a bridge too far. But is 80 too much? I don't know. I just know that we're going to see, and I don't want to call them just dump-offs, because these are not going to be, there's no one else to throw it to, so let's dump it off to Nahim. They've had him in specific routes. So it's really interesting to see. And I just, again, we talked about what Paris Campbell can do. Nahim Hines is such a weapon. And he does, somebody mentioned to me on a comment on the story, is He says, think Darren Sproles, which we've mentioned in the past. And you don't want to, lay too much on a guy, but that's kind of what he does. And he's really good getting the ball in space and making a guy miss. So it's really interesting how they're going to do it. The issue I have, and I go back to the receivers, is they say, well, we have Pittman and we hope Campbell stays healthy and Pierce and, Doolin. And they say, oh, by the way, we also have Nahim Hines. Well, but he is a running back. So let's not say that we're bolstering our wide receiver core because we've got Nahim Hines. I would rather have 4 really good receivers, and oh, by the way, I have Nahim, as opposed to I've got 2 or 3 and I've got Nahim. So I just don't buy into totally what they're doing. But like Frank Reich told us during the offseason, and if I were a fantasy owner, I'd be drafting Nahim Hines. I agree with him.
Before we move on to our kind of preseason preview there, I'll mention just one more player, and that is Ashton Doolin, who's had a pretty good training camp. My number one breakout player, of course, which is why I have to bring him up and have to talk him up right here at this point of the podcast. But Nick Foles stood in front of the mic chap yesterday and was talking about Doolin and saying, like, it seemed like he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to let the secret out of the bag. That's kind of how it came across to me. A veteran QB like Foles has developed a good rapport with him because we've seen Doolin a lot with the second team since he's kind of the 4th receiver. He's getting his play mostly there and only working from time to time with the first team. But he's been a field stretcher, a guy that they can hit down the field. I think if you're looking for downfield playmakers in this training camp, Mike, Doolin has been the target, or at least the target of positive results, completions down there more often than anybody else has.
And that's what you want. You've got to have to expect him to jump up and be your number 2 receiver is just unrealistic. But to be that Zach Pascal type guy who gives you 40 catches, 40 reliable catches, and I think that's really what he can do and needs to do. And one guy we haven't mentioned, which is really unfortunate for him, is Mike Strawn. This is a guy they thought was going to be in the mix, and he's not been on the field. He had knee surgery, a knee procedure, they said. So that's easy for them to say. And he's still on PUP, and every day he misses is a day that he can't get back, and you just have to wonder if year 2 is going to be a wasted season, a season that just goes by and passes him by. He showed stuff last year. He was sort of like had the good off season and camp, and he's like, hey, this guy's got a chance. And then the game was sort of maybe too big for him. He wasn't quite ready for it. But, again, like with Doolin, he makes plays. He makes those splash plays, and you need a guy to do that as long as he doesn't have to also be the guy to get you 50 catches. But there will be a role. I'll tell you, Frank gushes about Ashton Doolin. He just does, and I hope they're right.
And when you look at Strawn, and since you brought him up, like his scenario is just, it's a strange one in some instances with what the Colts are allowed to do with him, Joe, because like being an injured player right now, when it comes to what you can do with him on your roster, like there's a part of like, if you want to keep him somewhat or kind of protect him or put him on PUP, like you have to keep him on your 53. And so you have to end training camp with him there, and then you waive him, and then you hope that nobody scoops him up there, and then you can add him back, or injured reserve, and then you could add him and put him on IR at that point. You can kind of waive him with an IR designation, I think, is technically what it is. But yeah, it's like Chap. It's a weird scenario they're going to have with him. They're going to have to. Chris Ballard's going to have to play a little bit of roster ballet to keep him.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, and we talked about this in the press room the other day about Shaq. They're both on PUP. So again, I said, well, maybe you just leave Shaq on PUP and then he misses 4 games. No, they said, no, you can pass a physical and put him on the 53. But if you're on PUP now and you start camp on PUP, you just stay on PUP going into the season. And if somebody has better information, they can text us. But I'm pretty sure that if you're on PUP, you stay on PUP into the season, and then you can come back after 4 games. It's not like PUP. It's not like IR. You're not on IR.
Okay.
So I believe then you can be activated after 4 weeks, there's that 21-day window. So I fully expect Strawn to be on PUP as the season opens.
Okay, I was mistaken. It could completely ignore me.
Well, no, I'm just saying that's again, and they make changes, but I do think if you open camp on PUP, then all they have to do is leave you on PUP going into the season to where you don't count against the 53, and that's why you probably don't want to do that with Shaq, because if you're on PUP, you miss at least 4 games, and if they don't think he's that, but there's no indication that they think Strawn's going to be ready for the season, so. Maybe I'll triple check the rules, but I'm pretty sure that those of us in the media room came to a consensus that a guy on PUP stays on PUP if that's what you want to do, and then you can take him off after 4 games if that's what you wish.
What would you call a great health system? Just a few minutes down the road from Indianapolis, where you can see some of the area's top doctors and healthcare teams in great facilities, including one of the safest hospitals in America, and maybe even save a buck or two on your health care. We call it Hancock Health. So if you're looking for smart, safer, affordable care, head east to Hancock Health, where we're making health possible for the people of East Central Indiana and beyond.
The Colts preseason opener is in Buffalo Saturday, 4 o'clock Eastern time. You can watch it in Central Indiana on Fox 59. When it comes to that preseason opener or preseason football in general, the diehards will watch it. They want to see the end of that roster, and we're certainly glad that you do watch Fox 59. But you also, everyone wants to see the starters, wants to see that first unit, especially if there are a bunch of changes and you're excited for the new season and there's some anticipation, and that's the case certainly, for the Colts this year, as you have a new quarterback on offense. You have a slew of new players, impact players on defense on the other side of the ball. So you want to know exactly how much these players are going to play. Now, Frank Reich had said previously that the starters will play a little bit more in the preseason than previous years, but that's pretty generic. And then he was kind of pressed a little bit on it on Wednesday of this week, and he said his plan is for Matt Ryan specifically to play about a quarter in this first game. So he wants the starting quarterback, Matt Ryan, to play about a quarter. And what that tells me specifically, Chap, is if you have Matt Ryan out there, you're going to want as many first-team players on offense playing as possible to give him the best chance of success, especially when we're talking about that offensive line. And Quentin Nelson made it very clear today, Thursday, that he's going to play as well.
Well, it was funny. Kevin Bowen asked him, what was it? Do you want to play in the preseason? He said, "What type of question is that?" and if looks could kill, Kevin would have died on the spot.
That's a Quentin Nelson specialty.
Oh yeah, offensive line plays as long as Matt Ryan does, or vice versa, however you want to put it. And we were talking again before camp, because we tend to do that a lot about numbers of guys that won't play, and I will play more in the preseason than Jonathan Taylor will. I'm telling you. He's not going to step on the field. He'll go through pregame warm-ups, and then they'll take his helmet away. I'm not sure how much I would put Ryan out there. He didn't play last preseason. This is different, new team. But I don't play Michael Pittman. I don't play Stephon Gilmore. I'm talking preseason. I'm not talking Buffalo. I don't play Yannick Ngakoue. I don't play DeForest Buckner. Kenny Moore a little, Julian Blackmon a little. I just don't. I understand there's that balance. There's a balance of how much is enough, and Frank's already told us that starters will not play the second game against Detroit because of the 2 scrimmages, or not scrimmages, but joint practices that week. And then they'll play maybe, a half in that third game. But I'm in that school that I want this team healthy on September 11th. I just do. And I know they're trying to fight that balance of, we've had 2 really bad starts to the season with Frank, and we've had when's the last regular season opener they won? 2013. I mean, and the way this team's built, you have to do something this year, and the schedule is conducive to getting off to a good start if you play well. But I'm telling you, there's a handful of guys. If they this is the pessimistic view. I look at guys that if they get hurt, how does that impact your team? Well, if Taylor gets hurt, the total offensive blueprint is shot. It just is. And if Ngakoue gets hurt, he's your pass rusher. If Gilmore gets hurt, he's your cover guy. And and Buck is such a threat inside. So I don't know. They're going to play some. There's 5 or 6 guys that again, and if Pittman gets hurt, a receiver room that's already in question is shot. So I'm kind of put these guys in bubble wrap until September 11th because you want to be healthy going into the season. I don't know.
Joe, give me a list of guys that you are excited to not see play in the preseason, and then a list of guys you are excited to see play in the preseason, because those are certainly different lists, and it happens with every team at this time of year.
Yeah, the guy that's far and away, I don't want him anywhere near the field is Jonathan Taylor. He doesn't need it. He's a stud. He knows what he's doing with the ball in his hands. It's not like he's figuring out a new blocking scheme or anything like that. There's zero reason whatsoever to have Jonathan Taylor on the field. I am a little excited to see Matt Ryan. A whole quarter makes me slightly nervous. When Mike was talking about having these guys play an entire half, I got to say I don't love that. But I do think Matt Ryan needs to get more reps and more practice throwing to these new wide receivers in this new offense for him. So I can understand him playing a little bit. I agree with Pittman. If Ryan's out there a whole quarter, I hope Pittman's only out there with him for maybe 2 series. And then they really just try and work on, getting the ball to the other guys. And I kind of agree with most of the guys Mike already talked about on the defense. Maybe Buckner, it'd be great to see him get a little bit of work with the new defensive scheme, but I'm sure he'll figure it out. He's a veteran. He's a stud. It can't be too complex from that defensive tackle spot compared to some of the other positions. I'm excited to see Alec Pierce. I really am. The hype is kind of building on him. He's put it, you don't want to see a training camp highlight and assume that's what he's doing on every single rep. But he had the very nice play against Gilmore in the end zone where he kind of turns around and uses his body to shield him and come down with the football. Alec Pierce has all the physical tools you could ask for with size, speed, leaping ability. I would just love to see him do something on the field. I would like to see Nahim Hines in this role, and maybe they get him a couple of the schemed up routes that Mike was kind of talking about. And then really just all the rookies. Ogletree.
Of course, yeah.
I would like to see Nick Cross. Obviously, I want to see my boy Kwity Paye get into the backfield.
Of course.
But really all the young guys, the rookies, and then Matt Ryan, then the passing game is what I'll be focused on.
You briefly mentioned Nick Cross, and he's honestly near the top of my list for guys that I'm eager to see. And maybe that's because, everyone who's listened to this podcast knows I love safeties, and I love safety. I know, I am. I grew up watching Brian Dawkins in Philadelphia. I love good safety play. But there's something that's different about a preseason game, obviously, than even training camp 11-on-11, and that is full contact. That is full go. And that is a guy going for a big hit, and Nick Cross is, by all accounts, a guy that can do that, and that will play in the box, that will stick his nose in where the offense thinks it doesn't belong, and he will mess things up. And so I'm eager to see what he can do in that vein. I think you're going to see both him and Rodney McLeod a good deal. Even though McLeod's a veteran, you're going to see him out there because he's learning a new scheme here as well in the defense. But
and potentially 2 positions, the free safety position as well. I assume he'll be Blackman's primary backup as well. I
would assume that he is the number 1 backup for either spot. Yes. So I'm really eager to see Cross in particular. I think he's a guy that's not one of the obvious choices, that you would want to see that I want to see.
And I think he's set up to look really good in the preseason where the offenses aren't doing the most complex things.
Yep.
As a rookie who's still learning the game, because he's got the speed and the big hit ability. So I would not be surprised if you see him streaking down the field and deliver a big hit on a guy when he's facing more simplistic offense and doesn't have to really use that experience or that mind as much. He can just kind of react and go.
Mike, you touched on this, but if there is any data, anything at all that indicates a little bit more preseason time for the starters could lead them to be better in week one, the Colts have got to go down that road just because of how poorly they have started the season in recent years. I mean, just last year they were 1-4. In their playoff season with Frank Reich, his first year in 2018, they were 1-5. They have not won a season opener since 2013 against the then Oakland Raiders way back then. They've lost to everyone from good teams to the 1-15 Jacksonville Jaguars a couple years ago, where it was the only win that team got the entire season. That was down in Jacksonville. I remember because I was there. It was less than fun for many parties involved. So, like I said,
not going to Houston, are you?
I'm not going to Houston,
All
but
right.
I am going to Jacksonville week 2. I am going there. But so Chap, like I said, if there is any data that can indicate that they are better off for preseason play, you've got to take it, because what this franchise has been doing has not been working to get completely ready for that first game of the season.
Isn't the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect different results? And they've altered training camp with the idea of let's do something different and let's kind of see if this kind of gives us a jolt. The noon practices, it's to replicate a 1:00 kickoff, and all of everything they've done is to let's do it different and see if we can get a different result. And I understand it. I understand that. And that's why maybe they play some of these guys a little bit more. And the fact that, and on top of that, you got a new quarterback, you got a rookie receiver, and you've changed your defense, greatly changed your defense with scheme and pass rusher and corner. I understand that. And that's why it's a fine balance. And and we'll see in November if it worked. And we'll see if they play guys more and somebody gets hurt and they're going to say, see, why'd you have him out there? Well, you just have to kind of see what you do. And I was asking Jonathan Taylor, does he need to play? And he wants to play because he's a football player. And I always thought back to Edgerrin James's years that I would like to see my running back get hit once, to where the first big hit's not in the season opener. But then you think about it. Let's just say they go crazy and they don't play JT this week or next week. They play him in the third game and he gets 2 carries and somebody gets him a pretty good hit. Okay, and then he gets up and it's over. They don't play for 2 weeks. So how much did that one hit carry over to the opener? I think they believe if he doesn't play, and he's not going to play, they're not going to say it, but he's not going to play. They believe they can get enough work done, enough contact done, and if nothing else, if they think he needs to get hit once, let Bobby Okereke go out there on a Wednesday afternoon and just lay the wood to him once, and then see Oke's ready to go. So if what they've done, if they get off to a good start and they make the playoffs and all that, then this worked. If they don't, if they go to Houston and struggle or lose and Jacksonville, then it didn't work. We'll see, but at least they're trying something different.
Joe, I'm surprised that you didn't have preseason lines for us here. Colts favored, Bills favored. We always get that during the regular season. Come on, man, you're slacking.
Yeah, I got to be honest, that who actually wins the game is not what I'll be looking for. It'll also be interesting to see how many of the Bills starters play. I think Josh Allen's already come out that he won't be playing at all.
Yes, correct.
Not surprising there. But if the Colts are playing their starters, you'd think it'd kind of be more valuable for them to go against the Bills starters in return. So hopefully they get a few reps. Maybe Pryor will get to go up against, I don't know, Von Miller or Greg Rousseau, their former first-round pick, a few times in this game, just to kind of get them that repetition against the other teams, starting players. In terms of a lot can be decided on the back end of the roster in these preseason games. Maybe 2 guys are close in camp, and who performs better in the preseason is kind of the deciding factor. Are there a few guys that you'll be looking for when it's the fourth quarter to step up and make a play who are trying to make the team?
You know who's done a lot is JoJo Doman. Like, he's around the ball all the time with the second linebacker unit. Like, I think that's going to be a good battle between him and Forrest Ryan and my guy, Sterling Weatherford. Hamilton Heights' his own. Go Huskies. That's going to be a good battle in there. I don't know if any of the running backs can really supplant either Deion Jackson or Phillip Lindsay there in the 3 or 4 spot. Any of the other guys, I'd say that's unlikely. Desmond Patman is likely, I think, to make this roster as the 5th receiver, but does anyone else, like maybe it's Kiki Kuti that is also there. So, I mean, Desmond Patman could do a lot to solidify himself on this roster with a good performance or two. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Those are the positions that I'm looking at that came right off the top of my head. I think the backups also, if anybody flashes on the defensive line, that'd be great because you like, especially in the interior, a little bit more dynamic play from there. Chap, what about you?
Well, yeah, and we haven't talked about it yet, and we were talking about it more during camp this week and last week was place kicker. You know, it's Hot Rod and it's Verite. I was a little surprised today. Well, Frank said it's going to be. I asked him. He said, "Well, it's going to be half and half. You know, one guy kicks first half, one guy kicks second half. Maybe they do that all in these 3 games or 3 games. The problem is, you may not get any chances in your half, and the other guy does. So, I was because they've only had 15 kicks each during practice. They're both 13 of 15. Hot Rod kicked a 56-yarder today, and Thunderfoot pushed it wide right. And I said, well, they've got to be kicking more like during the walkthroughs and all this. And he said, well, yeah, but they're really grading these guys almost solely on what they do during practice. Well, 15 kicks. I mean, holy smokes. That's not much. That's why I'm sticking with Hot Rod making this team, and because I think Verite simply has to be that much better. And I'm not sure how much you can show you're that much better in. Again, they've had 15 kicks, so they'll end up this preseason training camp with, I don't know, maybe 40 kicks to judge. And if one guy really shines in games, but so many people think that Verite is going to unseat him. To me, he's got to be a lot better, a lot better. And whether they can get that done in preseason games when you're not guaranteed attempts, or what I think is limited work in practice, we'll see where they go. But let's not dismiss kicker. How many times have they lost a game? 2019 just jumps to mind when you don't have a reliable kicker or a guy that's able to kick reliably, I guess. So I'm kind of watching how these kickers play out.
Yeah, I guess another guy that I'm kind of looking for is Marcel Dabo, the rookie coming over from Europe. See if he can flash at all. That'd be a great sign for someone who's seen as an extremely developmental player. Maybe they give him a chance on kick return, punt return, something like that. I know he did that over in Europe. Maybe he makes a play in the defensive backfield. But yeah, really roster spots towards the end of the game, seeing how the passing game looks, seeing if any of the rookies can flash. And I'll kind of throw Dio in there as well because he didn't really get a lot of chances his rookie year coming back from the Achilles. So he's almost like a rookie in which you're trying to see what he can do now that he's fully healthy.
Who do you think is favored in this game between the Colts and the Bills, Joe? According to FanDuel's numbers here.
Probably the Colts because Matt Ryan's playing and Josh Allen is not.
Indeed. The Colts are 1-point favorites. They are -1 there. Bills +1. And the over-under is a remarkable 35. It is I was looking through all these numbers. There isn't an over-under for this week above 37.5 is the biggest one.
Who's that?
37.
In the regular season, isn't it probably 47, 48?
Yeah, the lowest one of the week might be 37.5 in the regular season.
One thing, let's just do a public service here. And I'm all for gambling. I think it's kind of cool if you can afford it and you can handle it. Just keep in mind, in preseason games, you're going to have, if you bet the Colts, you're going to have Sam Ehlinger with his money in your hand in the fourth quarter. You're going to have in every game, it's going to be the third and the fourth quarterback throwing the ball. So, hey, if you've got $100 that you can go out in your front yard and light a match to, knock yourself out. but you're not going to have Matt Ryan leading that fourth quarter comeback.
You're going to be begging Forrest Ryan to make a stop on a 4th and 1 on as the Bills try to go for it at the 36-yard line to keep their drive alive. So, yeah, Chap makes a good point. So, just play responsibly, as they say. If
play responsibly.
Exactly. If that is your choice. We do appreciate you listening to this Colts Blue Zone podcast. This time next week, we'll have a game to break down. A little bit more training camp to discuss as well. You can follow us throughout the week at Colts Blue Zone on Twitter. Mike is at mchappell51. You can also follow his work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Joe Hopkins is at Roto Street Joe. I'm Dave Griffiths. You can follow me at DaveG_sports. We appreciate you listening. Colts Bills, if you're in Central Indiana, on Fox 59, 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. And we'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.